Right, so Chofei Omid Aleph is where we're up to. And hopefully, Peter, will call upon you in due course to help us out with various videos and stuff. Right, let's go to the Gemara, Chofei Omid Aleph, halfway down the page, where it says, if you remember, the story of the Mishnah that we had previously, Robert's with us now. Remember where the witnesses say they saw the old moon in the morning. Hello? They saw the old new moon in the morning, and then they saw the new moon in the evening. Now, we've mentioned this before, you can't do that. You can't have this within that 12-hour period and seeing the old moon, one side of the moon crossing over in the plane of the sun and then coming over the other side. That all can't happen in 12 hours. So many people weren't very happy. Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri in particular said you can't accept witnesses like that. There's obviously made some mistake. Nevertheless, Rabban Gamliel did accept them. Says the Gemara. Got it about halfway down the page. Chofhei Omid Aleph. Tanya, we got a brisa. Rabban Gamliel said to the sages who challenged him and says, how can you accept witnesses who say they saw the old moon early in the morning and then saw the new moon the end of the day? You can't do that. Says Rabban Gamliel to the Chachomim, Kach mukublani mi beis avi abba. I have a tradition for my Zaydas, Abi Abba, but it means going back, father's father, etc. A lot of these things, particularly we're talking about the new moon, as you can imagine in those days, not a lot of instruments available for astronomical calculations and telescopes that we're talking going back that far, 2,000 years. But he had a Kabbalah. He had this a Masoris or tradition passed from his ancestors. Pa'omim shebo ba'arucha, and pa'omim shebo b'ksara. Sometimes the moon, we're halfway down the page, Chofhei Omid Aleph, just with the Gemara there. Sometimes the moon is shorter and longer than other times. In other words, if it's crossing the horizon, sometimes it can be long. Now, of course, it depends whether it's summer, winter, because if you imagine, you can't see the moon within a 12-hour, but you can't see the old moon and then a new moon within 12 hours. But if the whole day is longer than 12 hours, it might be possible. So sometimes it is longer, sometimes it's shorter. Imagine you've got a short night in winter. Of course, then even less. You won't see the moon right across the night. So Omer Rabbi Yochanan, Ma Tama, which means what's the reason? In other words, as we said before, normally people expect not to see a moon, the old moon in the morning and the new moon in the evening. That's far too short. But sometimes it does happen. And beautiful posuk here. Matama debay Rebbe. What is the reason of Rebbe? Remember what Rebbe said, he just mentioned before, going back. Some people change this to the words of Rabban Gamliel, but it's all the same household. If you remember, going down from Hillel, it goes down, all the descendants go to Rabbi Yehuda HaNossi, Rabban Gamliel, Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel. Look at this posuk. The Sib Osa Yoreach Lo Moadim. We'll come back to that in a moment. Also Yoreach Lo Moadim normally translates is Hashem made the Moad, the Yomim Tovim Lo Moadim. Shemesh Yoda Mavoya, the moon, the sun, Yoda Mavoya, he knows when it rises. But it could be translated as Shemesh Yoda, he knows an individual. Normally, we can predict, assuming you're in a country where you've got clear skies, you can predict pretty much on a day-to-day basis when the moon will rise. And pretty much, you know what happened yesterday? It's going to be a minute or two either side. and you can shemesh yoda mavoyo. You'll know when it's coming, when it's rising. Shemesh udi yoda. You'll know when it rises and when it sets. The sun, yoda, a person can know from day to day what's happening. But yoreach lo yoda mavoy. When it comes to the moon, it's much trickier. Oh yes, you've got the experts, the astronomers who know exactly what's happening. But the normal man in the street, if you were to ask him what time, if you were to ask somebody in the street, if you're in a country where you do see sunrise, sunset, and you'll say, what time is sunset tonight? They'll say, well, I remember yesterday it was about so and so. Challenge somebody and say, what time is moon rise tonight or moon setting tonight? Much trickier, very complicated calculations, and as I say, depends where you are, latitude, it depends what time of the year, and therefore there are occasions when it might be possible over a whole day to see the old moon first thing in the morning and the new moon right at the end of the day. So that is a possibility, although that's not the norm, and therefore Rabbi Gamliel did accept them. Okay, says the Gemara. Have you got it in line? Is who diyoda? Says the Gemara. Rabbi Chia, the great Rabbi Chia. What happened? The Gemara says Rabbi Chia. Let's just have a look here. Yes, Rabbi Chia. You find normally Rabbi Chia. Actually, he was Rabbi Chia was pretty much in between the Tanoim and Amoraim. We normally regard Rabbi Yehuda Hanossi towards the end of the section of the group called Tanoim, appearing in Mishnayos. One of his Talmudim was Rabbi Chia. Again, as I say, he's really in the group which spans the Amoraim and the Tanoim. Anyway, what happened here? Rabbi Chia, as the Gemara says, Chazia l'sihara. Have you got that in the Gemara? Rabbi Chia saw the moon, Davi koi b'tzafra, beginning of the line. He saw it was there in b'tzafra in the morning. If you see, remember the old moon is visible in the morning, the new moon's always toward the evening, earlier on in the night, but the old moon, because if you think about it, if you're looking up at the sun, a new moon means the moon is just past the plane of the sun, and therefore it's just past, and therefore you'd normally have the sun setting, and then you see the moon. Might see it together. The other way around, where you've got the old moon, it's the moon. When you're looking up at the sky, you'd see the moon, and if you're looking at the moon at the left of the moon, you'd see the sun. So therefore, you'd normally see the moon rising followed by the sun. Says the Gemara, what happened here? He saw the moon in the morning of Esrim B'Tisha, of the 29th day of the month. Now, from the Gemara here, it seems like this was Elul. So the 29th of Elul, he saw the new old moon in the morning. Now, what would happen therefore is he wanted, and we've seen this principle before, Elul is generally a 29-day month, right? And you'll see what he wanted to do in this case. Shokal, as a sign, he picked up kolo, like a clod of earth, posak there, and he threw it up to the moon as a gesture. So again, the old moon was seen that day, which means, Omar, he said, L'urta, in the evening, Bo'inon l'kidushe boch. We'd like to sanctify you tonight. We want tonight to be the new moon, like people saw the new moon tonight, right? The new moon already? Okay. Va'at kaimas hocha, and you're here already. Well, I wouldn't say already, you're still here in the day. Are you with me? So the Gemara is suggesting the following. they saw, or Rab Chia saw, the old moon in the morning of the 29th. What he was hoping for is that night, or very early in the coming night, just after sunset, you'd be seeing the new moon. But it's going to be impossible. If he saw the old moon that morning, as we've said before, remember the general principle we saw even today, that generally you cannot in a 12-hour period see the old moon and then see the new moon. But he was very keen that that following night would be the first visibility of that moon, right? Why was he so keen? As we've mentioned before, have a look at the Rashi there. Have you got it? Lekidu sheikh, beginning of the line in my Rashi here. We want to make tonight Yom Tov, which means we can do that if people saw the new moon tonight. And we want to make it tonight Yom Tov of Rosh Hashanah. Why? Because we want the month of Elul to be a 29-day month. And therefore tonight, going from 29 to 30, we want the moon to be visible. And therefore we can then announce tomorrow being day number 1 of the new month of Tishrei. Again, look at Rashi. Rashi says, we want to make Elul short, Choseh, which means a 29-day month. Now, we've mentioned this principle before, and we'll come more about this later on in the Omud. The Chachamim have the power to announce when Rosh Chodesh is. Of course, there's only 2 possible days, of course. Every month is either 29-day or 30-day. We've had this before. But the Beis Din can announce it, even if the moon's not visible. They have the power, and we'll find psukim about this later. Now, he's concerned, even though he wanted to announce the following night to be Rosh Chodesh, and la'ayim alu edim, Rashi says, to warn the edim, lomer, as if to say, we could have seen it, we did see it, and they're allowed to do that. It's not actual sheker, because it's like we know it should be there, and therefore we're calling tonight Rosh Chodesh. Okay, so it's a strange situation where the witnesses actually don't have to see the moon, but sometimes the Beis Din is very keen that the following day should be Rosh Chodesh or Rosh Hashanah in this case. Why did they want to do that? Says Rashi, even though it might not have been seen, we were going to announce tomorrow being Rosh Hashanah, right? They can do that. You're right, it sounds a bit bizarre, but they're psukim to tell us that the Beis Din have a power to announce that a day is Rosh Chodesh, or in this case, Rosh Hashanah. But this is going to cause a problem. Lefi shahoyu iba hachodesh doiche es Yom Kippurim eitzel Shabbos. Do you remember this principle? What they didn't want is to have Yom Kippur either side of a Shabbos, because Yom Tov it might be possible. Or you can get some other people, you can get some non-Jews to do a burial, but not on Yom Kippur and not on Shabbos. And what they didn't want is to have 2 days, sadly, if someone passes away, and then have 2 days where you won't be able to do a burial. So what they did, and they can do this within, as I say, within their parameters, they can announce a day being Rosh Hashanah so that Yom Kippur will not fall either side of Shabbos. You okay? Hope not confusing people here. They can announce that today is Rosh Hashanah, and that's what they wanted to do. But the problem was that morning, the old moon was seen. Have a look now back at the Gemara. Have a look. Beginning of the line. We want to announce that tonight is Rosh Hashanah. You're still here in the morning, the old moon. In other words, we can sometimes announce that today is Rosh Hashanah, but we don't want to do something which is so blatantly obvious that it can't be Rosh Chodesh. Now, again, the Beis Din have the power to do this, but we don't want to do something which looks so obviously incorrect. I put incorrect in inverted commas, because the man in the street will say, I saw the old moon this morning. There's no way there could be a new moon this evening. So he said to him, Zil ichse. Remember, he threw up a clod of earth as if to say to the moon, oh, I wish there would be some clouds and nobody could see you first thing in the morning, right? So it looks like it was towards the end of the evening, the moon was visible, and he was saying, oh, please, I hope you will be invisible by the time we get to the morning. In other words, some cloud formation. So then the old moon will not be seen. And therefore, when we announce tomorrow that day is Rosh Hashanah, people will not say, oh, it's blatantly obvious that that's wrong. It can't be. As I say, although they've got the power to do that, they don't want to do something which looks so obviously, I'll say, incorrect in inverted commas. You with me? So Omale, Rebbe L'Rabchia. Rebbe seems to have got involved here. That was his teacher. Rebbe said to Rabchia, Zil le'ein tov. Go to Ein Tov. Interesting. What's his Ein Tov? V'kadshe le'yacha. And go and sanctify the moon in a place called Ein Tov. Have a look at Rashi, please. Zil Ein Tov v'kadshe. Go to Ein Tov and sanctify there. Doeg hoyom. He was very scared, this Reb Chia. Shelo yarananu olav b'nei iroi. People were not, in his own city, people will say, how is that possible? How could you have made it in this same city where you are, where we saw the moon this morning? You can't have a visibility of the new moon that, say, the end of that day. So he told him, go, because if they saw the moon on any time during the 29th, people will say it's impossible. How come you're announcing the next day or that night to be Rosh Hashanah? It's not possible. I know it doesn't matter, but they don't want to do something which looks so obviously incorrect. So the Gemara says, so Rashi finishes, the Saleh Tununosu Me'olai. Remove those people coming complaining to me, and therefore go out of town. And then you can always say, well, the moon was actually visible in this other town, and therefore it was possible to make the next day Rosh Chodesh or Rosh Hashanah. Are you with me? So he told, he sounds like Rebbe, actually normally would fall upon Rebbe to be Mekadesh the Chodesh anyway. But he told Reb Chia, he gave him the permission to be Mekadesh Chodesh, but go out of town to a place, and then you can always say, if people really come asking questions, we can always say, well, in fact, it was visible in a place out of Yerushalayim. A difficult one. Look at Rashi gives another interpretation. Umori Pirish, my teachers taught in the following way. Why did he tell them to go to this place? Ein Tov, Shegozru Gezeru, there was a Roman decree, Bimkoimo in his place, Shelo Yekadshu Es HaChodesh. That's why. In other words, all he was saying is, I know it's pretty bad news when the moon was seen in the morning. There's nothing much we can do about it. We will sanctify the moon tonight, or tonight for tomorrow, but go to the normal place where the Sanhedrin sits. Have a look at the last Tosfos, please. Zil Ein Tov B'Kadshe. Have you got that last Tosfos? Go to Ein Tov and sanctify the moon there. Shom Hoyu Kavuyim Lekadesh Es HaChodesh. That is the place where they sat to sanctify the moon. Kedeisa B'Psikta. It's like a medrash. Psikta Rabosi, it's called. There's a pasuk that says, Tiku v'chodesh shofar. Remember, blow the chodesh, the new moon, the shofar, talking about Rosh Hashanah. Lomo bezdin makadish ma'chodesh be'ein tov. Why was it they went to Ein Tov? Lefisha hu beis va'ad. That is a place, their meeting place. Ein Tov, interesting why it's called Ein Tov, good eye, Ayin Tova. Omar Kodesh Baruch Hu, why it's a base moyed shel kol ha'olam. It's going to be the meeting place, but the whole world is dependent on this announcement. Why? Famous pasuk that we know. No, we can have a rendition later, Peter, if you like. Ki mitzion teitzei soira. From Zion comes forth the Torah. This is really what we were talking about. In other words, the announcement of the Rosh Chodesh or Rosh Hashanah comes from Zion, from Yerushalayim, and then goes outwards. For Omer b'Yerushalmi, Kashem shetoikim b'Yavne. Remember, Yavne, we learned the Mishnah, well, we haven't learned that yet, it's a Mishnah coming up, that they always blew the shofar in Yavne. Yavne was the place where the Beis Din sat, even if it fell on Shabbos, Rosh Hashanah on Shabbos, they blew the shofar there. Kach toikim be'ein tov. Yerushalmi says they also blew it in ein tov, which shows, says Tosfos mashma, it appears, sho'oyashon Beis Din kovua dumi the Yavne. Later on, the Gemara will explain where the Beis Din moved from Yerushalayim and as it went into exile. And one of the places moved to Yavne, but it sounds like from Yerushalmi, this place ein tov was a place where the Beis Din sat, and that's why he told Rebbe told Rab Chia, go to Ein Tov, because Ein Tov is the place, the meeting place for the rabbis, and that's where they announce the new moon. And therefore, I know the moon may have been seen this morning, but I'm terribly sorry. We're going to have to announce tonight being Rosh Hashanah, because we do not want to have a Yom Kippur falling either side of Shabbos. And therefore, the Gemara later will explain, as I said, where do we learn this principle? I mean, it's this interesting principle that Beis Din have the power to be able to announce when Rosh Chodesh is. As I say, there's going to be psukim for that. Okay? Says the Gemara.
Norman, I don't quite understand, because if it is the 29th and they see it, the old moon on the 20th, but by definition, that evening has to be Rosh Chodesh, doesn't it?
No. Rosh Chodesh, you're right. The moon is seen on the 29th. Now,
the old moon.
Right? Imagine, in this case, what has to normally happen is there must be visible moon. You see the moon.
Yes.
The Eidim would then come forward and say, we saw the moon.
Yes.
Now, the new moon is normally visible just at the time of sunset, around sunset time.
Yes.
So witnesses, if they saw the moon then, once you go beyond that, then the moon is already set and you won't see the moon that night anyway.
Yes.
Right? So you just have to see it just by sunset, just the beginning of night. Now, if you saw the old moon, as we said before, there's normally a 12-hour gap before you can actually see that moon, because it's it's so small and is hidden by the sun. So if somebody saw the old moon and people would have seen it, perhaps a clear night, you saw it that day, people are going to scratch their head and say, come on, who could have seen that moon tonight within 12 hours of seeing it during the day? Now, as I said before, the Beis Din have the power to be able to announce that night being Rosh Chodesh, even if it wasn't visible.
Yes.
But it's much nicer if it follows the normal procedure of the moon being visible, Eidim coming, saying they saw the moon, then you really get the tick in the boxes. And the Beis Din would prefer to do that. So that's why they were a bit Rechia was a bit upset, because the moon had been seen that morning, and he knew that night they were going to make Rosh Hashanah. See, had it been another month, they could have pushed it off for another day. But they didn't want to push Yom Kippur or Rosh Hashanah off for another day, because Yom Kippur would have fallen on the wrong day. Yep. So they were going to have to use their card, which says we can announce Rosh Chodesh whether or not the moon was visible. But they preferred not to do that, because people will say, whoa, the moon wasn't really visible, was it? So that's why this happened. So that's the general rule. Says the Gemara.
Can I ask?
Yes.
Because it sounds like such a difficult emergency situation, but it seems they would have known that the Rosh Chodesh, because these Adim had seen the old moon.
Not
that
Adim,
tells us
people in the street. I mean,
okay, people.
nobody,
Okay, because so therefore we now know that was never going to be Rosh Chodesh.
no.
In fact,
In other words, absolutely right. The Bezdin we knew were going to announce that following day was going to be Rosh Hashanah. Why? Because they didn't want Yom Kippur to fall either side. But they were hoping and praying, I hope the moon's not going to be visible this morning, because it's going to look so blatantly obvious that they're using that card of theirs, get out of jail card, to announce Rosh Chodesh even if the moon wasn't visible.
And they would have known this risk existed as soon a month ago, as soon as Elul was fixed. So why would they not have preempted it and say, made it known to people that, even if you see the moon next month, Tishrei is going to be on that date. Whatever happens, we're not going to look for Adim. We're not going to accept anything. We're going to say that it's 29 days. Wouldn't that be better than having this emergency situation where, people have seen the moon, now what do we do?
It's very interesting. You can see from the Rashi here that even in that case, when the moon was not visible, it looked like they would have gone through the procedure. You can see from the Rashi, we saw that principle before, as if Adim would come forward and say, well, it looks like it was visible. In other words,
patience.
Sorry, Peter. I won't ask any more questions. It's all my fault.
It's not your fault. The question was fabulous. Big question. I love it.
My fault. I came on, sort of keep off the video. We were hoping for better things. You can see from that Rashi that the Adim would actually go through the motions. They want to go through the motions. Otherwise, you can say in future months, it's not worth coming, because I know the Bezdin will do whatever they want to do. The ideal is certainly to have Adim saying we saw the moon. They don't want to move away from that. Even in this situation, we will get the Adim to say something. I don't know how they do it. They say we saw the moon. They don't want to move away from that, because otherwise it belittles the whole situation in the future. So they want to go through those motions. But Reb Chia was hoping that the moon won't be visible that morning, because otherwise it makes it so difficult to go through those motions, which they're going to go through. So there was that possibility. I say even in Tishrei, it could be a cloudy morning and you won't actually see the moon. So they were hoping for that, but they will go through those motions of witnesses, people saying it's as if we've seen the moon. It's as if we've seen the moon so that we can make today Rosh Chodesh. So they do, you can, as I say, from Rashi, you can see they want to go through those motions rather than saying we're actually not utilizing that the powers that we've got, because then in future months, the same thing may happen and people may not bother to come at all. So it's very clear they want to use that. La'ayim esoedim, Rashi says there. We've seen this Gemara before. Loima ro'inuhu bismano. So they are going to go through those motions. It's as if we've seen the moon, the witnesses will say. They do want to do that, and because that is the preferred way to do things, and therefore that's what they would do. Oh, no, good point. You're saying send out a note and warn everybody we're not going to be doing that. Stick to the normal rule, and we'll have to deal with it as the time comes. And that's exactly what happened. So Rebbe telling Reb Chia, and we know what happens. Nevertheless, still go to Ayin Tov or Ayin Tav and make the announcement. Not much of an answer for you, but you just see that that's what they were very keen to do, to keep that general system operative. The Gemara then says, Tonu Rabbanon, Pam achas niskashru shomayim ba'ovim. The heaven, the sky, full of clouds. V'nireis demus levona. it appeared as if there was a form of the moon, Be'esrin v'tisha l'chodesh, on the 29th. Sounds like that night, perhaps going into the following night. Everybody thought, you know what's going to happen? Tonight, they're going to make an announcement. Loima Rosh Chodesh. Everybody expected the moon was visible after 29. After 29, so when day 30 is going to be the new moon. Everybody saw the moon. They even perhaps it came. Oh, look at this. Ubikshu Bezin Lekatshoy. Wow. Bezin themselves. It looks like it was spot on. This cloud formation was spot on, the right height, the right size. And Bezdin themselves, they've cleared it with the Adim, and they're about to announce that day is going to be Rosh Chodesh. Right? Omar Lohem Rabban Gamliel. This is the Gemara which we saw before a few months ago. Do you remember this Gemara, gentlemen? Omar Lohem Rabban Gamliel. Hello? Probably best to come on mute for people. Thank you, Peter. Kachmukublani mi beis avi abba. I have the tradition going back. My ancestors, Avi Abba, the Zeta, and earlier on still. It can't be because Ein Chidusha Shelavona Pechusa, the new moon cannot come earlier than, what it really means is spot on, and clearly there wasn't enough time between the previous moon, the moilad of the moon, and they knew when that was, to the current one. He said they can't be less than Esrim B'Tisha Yom, there's your 29 days, Umechza and a half a day, Ushnei Shlishi Shor, and 2/3 of an hour, Va'ayin Gimel Chalokim, and 73 Chalokim. You can't have less than that, and I'm afraid you've come saying you saw the moon, which is actually earlier than that date. It's not possible. I know you were fooled. We were all fooled. A lot of the Bezdin was fooled when they checked it with you. But I'm afraid we cannot allow this edus. Now, of course, as we said before, if they wanted to, they could have done. But Rabban Gamliel said, it's much better to use the normal situation, visibility, seeing the moon, and then coming, announcing it, and then announcing Rosh Chodesh. Says Rabban Gamliel, it can't be. Because notice the time, 29 days, half a day. There's your 12 hours. And 2/3 of an hour, there's your 40 minutes, and 73 chalokim. Do you remember what a chelek was in those times? 3 1/3 seconds, because they're 1,080 in an hour. And Peter will tell us 73 chalokim in seconds. If 1,080 make an hour, good question. 73 chalokim. In other words, every chelek is 3.3 seconds. So if I've got another 73 chalokim, how many minutes have we got? And how many seconds? What's that? 30, what do you say? 73 times 3.333 or 3.3 recurring is
243.33.
243. So what's that in minutes? Another 4 minutes, isn't it? No, 240. Another 4 minutes, and 3 1/3.
4 minutes and 4 minutes 0.55.
Right. So in other words, we've now got 29 days, 12 hours, 43 minutes, and 3.33 seconds. Correct?
Yep.
He's said the Gemara. Let's just finish this Gemara, and then we'll come back to that video clip again. On that day, Mesa Imoshel ben Zozo, the mother of Ben Zozo. Now it's interesting, he doesn't have his own name. So it sounds like he's just, I wouldn't say a man of the street, but perhaps an unassuming gentleman. Ben Zozo, the mother of Ben Zozo, passed away. That day, which the Bezdin initially wanted to call Rosh Chodesh until Rabbi Gamliel put the span in the works and said, I'm sorry, it can't be Rosh Chodesh. This lady died. V'hispida Rabbi Gamliel hesped godel. And Rabbi Gamliel made a huge hesped for her. Well, why? Why did he do that? Says the Gemara, Lo mipnei sheru'uya lakach, not that it was suitable. She was a great personality and well-known, a quiet lady. I'm not saying she wasn't a great tzaddikus, but wasn't known to be a great tzaddikus. Certainly wouldn't have necessarily warranted a great hesped. Elo, but he did that, says the Gemara, so everybody will know. It couldn't have been Rosh Chodesh. Look at Rashi. There is no Rashi there. Yes. Yes. Have I missed something? The next Shiur. I've missed out something, haven't I?
You've missed out maybe.
I have missed out.
Why
missed out a line, hasn't I?
Why he eulogized the
I have. Go back a little bit. Sorry. Do you remember when he threw up the clod of earth, and he went to? Remember, he was told. I skipped a piece. He went to Ein Tov. Remember, that was the place where they met. I skipped the line. V'sholach li, and send me back a simon. This is very important. Send me back a simon. But what? The simon will be whether or not you've actually done Kiddush Levon. Don't forget, according to the first pshat of Rashi, the Romans did not like this idea at all about the announcing of Rosh Chodesh, and therefore he said, send me back this message. And then what will be the message that I know you've actually carried out, being Mekadesh the Chodesh? Look at the Gemara. Beginning of line is Sholach li, or Shalach li, send to me, Simona, a sign. David Melech Yisrael Chai V'Kayim. Everybody knows that song. This is the source for you, gentlemen. If ever it comes up in one of your quizzes. David Melech Yisrael Chai V'Kayim. David, king of Yisrael, Chai V'Kayim, living. That was a simon. Have a look at the Rashi, please. It begins, David Melech Yisrael, the beginning of the line is HaChodesh. Have you got the Rashi? It's about a few lines up, about 10, 12 lines up. David Melech Yisrael, Nimshal Kalavono. David Melech Yisrael himself is compared to, have you got to begin a line of Rashi? Kalavona, like the moon. Shener Maboy Kisoy Kashemesh Negdi. He's talking about the throne, that capital, chapter 89 of Tehillim, talks about the throne of King David. Kisoy, his throne, Kashemesh will be like the sun, Kuyoreach like the moon, Yikoil Olam. It will be, and it will there in everlasting. The if you like, we talk about the dynasty. So that's what they notice that was the simon that he gave. If you manage to be Mekadesh the moon, then send me back that message, David Melech Yisrael Chai V'Kayim, and I'll know that all's well. And why? Because the moon itself, compared to the King David, a very interesting King David, people may know. Actually, how many generations are there? In fact, this is a very good question for you. How many generations from Avram up to Shlomo HaMelech, which is really the zenith, if you like, the height, Shlomo HaMelech building the Beis HaMikdash? Can we work that out? You can, Peter, if you bring up the end of Ruth, the ring of Ruth, very good for Shavuos. How many generations are there up to Shlomo? Have you got in Sepharia? It's not one of the things I sent you, but Sepharia, if you go to the Megillas Rus. Oh, there we are. That's what we want. Va'ele told those Peretz. Remember, it talks about Ruth. talks about Boaz here. But who is Peretz? Well, there's Avram. Let me count. Avram is one. Yitzchok, Yaakov, Yehuda, and Yehuda's son is Peretz. So Peretz is number 5. Next, Holiness Chitzron, 6. Next possible. Chitzron, Holiness Rom, 7. Rom, Holiness Amidonov, 8. Amidonov, Holiness Nachshon. We all know Nachshon ben Amidonov, number 9. Nachshon, Holiness Salmon, 10. Salmon, the same thing. Holiness Boaz, number 11. Or Boaz, Holiness Oved. Oved, Holiness Yishai, 13. Yishai, Holiness David, 14. And ultimately you get to Shlomo HaMelech, who's number 15. And then if you go through your Nach, you'll find coming down, sadly, from Shlomo HaMelech right down to Tzidkiyahu, the last of the kings, is another 15, which is exactly like the moon, as I say, going up 15, down. Actually, some people say 29, which is just right for us. We've got the same as the moon going up and down. Similarly, we had the dynasty of David HaMelech, but what we are saying is that we'll come back, and that's exactly what we're saying when we say David HaMelech. So that was a secret. Just like the moon waxes and wanes, yes, it happened in the time of David up to Shlomo and down. We're looking forward to the return of that. If I can now ask you, Peter, to bring up that Mishnah, centralize that for us. Beautiful. Yes, this wonderful bracha, this monthly bracha of Kiddush Levana, when one sees the moon, the crescent moon, after 3 days since the Moilad. At the moment, it's only 2 days since the Moilad. But here in Ramat Beit Shemesh, a beautiful moon this morning, a very small crescent moon. It's too early to say Kiddush Levana, but you can find in your Sidurim, beautiful bracha, worth making. You don't need a minyan for it. You don't need 3 people. If you see the new moon at night, the crescent moon up to the full moon, you can make there's a beautiful bracha you'll see in all your Sidurim. Look it up under Sanctifying the Moon. And at the end of that, look at the second line. This is Rav Moshe Isserlis, the second line of Siman 426. V'noagim loima, if you look in the Sidurim, after you've made the bracha of Kiddush Levana, which means the new moon, Noagim loima David Melech Yisrael Chai v'Kayom. The minig is, you'll find that actually in your Sidurim, to say David, you can sing it if you like, David Melech Yisrael Chai v'Kayom. Why? Shemalchusoi nimshal lilvana. The kingdom, the reign of David HaMelech is like the moon, v'osid lehischadesh. We're looking forward to the renewal of that, the reign of King David and his descendants, Kamoisa, just like the moon. Or Knesset Yisrael, and like Knesset Yisrael, sadly, the ups and downs of Klal Yisrael throughout all the ages, going right through from the beginning of time, really. The ups and downs of Klal Yisrael through the Churbanos. But look, continue Rashi. Very interesting. You can see some a lot of Kabbalistic reasons behind the moon, and it very much resembles. Look at this. Knesset Yisrael Tachsa. We look forward to going back. Third line. Lihistabek babalo. Obviously, when the moon goes round and is closest to the sun, when we can't see it, it's at its close point to the close point to the sun, and the comparison is the husband and wife situation. Look at this. It's Klal Yisrael represents the moon getting to its close point to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Dugmas, similar to the Levana HaMischadeshes Imachamo. That's what, when we talk about the new moon, it means when the moon is at its closest to the sun, Imachamo. Shenem Hashemesh Umogein Hashem. The Hashem represents this sun, and we are like the shield or the moon. A lot of people do have a custom, not much of a dance, but just like a bit of a sing-song. It's a bit like a chasna. This time it's the chasna of Klal Yisrael to the Rabbeinu Shem. If I can ask you to scroll down, and I think you'll find, keep going further down. There we go. The Bir Halacha on the right-hand side. A little bit more. Scroll down a bit more. There, when it says V'noagim. Have you got it, V'noagim, in bold? V'noagim David HaMelech. You got it? Where it says V'noagim, that's right. The 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lines up in this Bir Halacha. Also from the Chofetz Chaim. He says, Ayin b'pri chodosh. Look in the Sefer, the Pri Chodosh. Shekosav sheyesh luzeh smach. This halacha is linked to Perek Beis of Rosh Hashanah, the Gemara we just saw now. Da'oma le Rebbe l'Rab Chia. Rebbe said to Rab Chia, Zil Ein Tov. Go to Ein Tov. Remember that was the place. V'kad sheliyacha ushalach li simona. Send me this signal. The David Mel Yisrael Chai V'Kayom Aim Shom B'Pirush Rashi, which we saw, because the moon, very similar, the waxing and the waning, to the rain going through all the kings of David HaMelech, and similar to Klal Yisrael, the ups and downs. But what we're looking forward to is a further up with the return of the kingdom of David HaMelech, etc. B'mheir of Yomeinu. Now, notice this idea about the Erusin. In other words, it's like a Nesuin, like a chasna. There are two things I want to mention. If we can now, we then saw the Gemara. If we can back to vision for a minute. Thank you, Peter. We then saw the Gemara that mentioned this famous number we've had before. Do you remember 29 days, 12 hours, 43 minutes, and 3.33 seconds mentioned here in the Gemara? Now, a couple of months ago, we brought up the video. I don't know if people remember that. Well, I thought if now's the time we learn this Gemara for another 3 minutes, let's have another look. Peter, if I can trouble you for the video, please.
Coming right up.
Film show for people. As it says, let's have the film show as large as possible, please.
One of the most beautiful apparitions visible in the night sky is the gray glowing orb known as our moon. The moon has captivated the imaginations of astronomers and astrologers since time immemorial. The moon's cycle through the sky is also critically significant for the Jewish calendar and forms the basis for establishing when the yearly holidays are celebrated. How long does it take for the moon to complete its synodic cycle around the Earth? We all know that the moon renews approximately once a month, but figuring out the exact amount of time between each lunar cycle can be quite tricky. To aid with this task, when Neil Armstrong visited the moon in 1965, he left behind a small array of mirrors facing the Earth. Using the most advanced laser technology available, NASA scientists were able to shoot laser beams at this tiny mirror and measure the returning photons. They then used this data in connection with atomic measuring instruments to precisely quantify the length of time between each lunar revolution. With this data, NASA concluded that the moon revolves around the Earth one time every 29.530588 days. Astonishingly, over 2,000 years ago, our sages calculated the length of the lunar cycle and came up with an almost identical number. I am in possession of a sacred tradition from the house of my father's father. The monthly lunar cycle takes no less than 29.5 days plus 2/3 of an hour plus 73 of the 1,080 subsections of an hour. If one combines these numbers, it is determined that this tradition put the lunar cycle at 29.53059 days every month. This number is within 1/6 millionth of a day from the figure that NASA recorded with the use of cutting-edge technology. This tiny differential is not due to lack of precision on the part of the sages, but rather due to the inherent limitation in the numerical system used to record time as compared to scientific measurement. How is it possible for the sages to have measured the lunar cycle with such unerring precision? Many astronomers over the ages have tried, but none of their numbers are even close to those possessed by the house of Rabbi Gamliel. One can only conclude that our sages had accesses to a divine source of knowledge.
Thank you, Peter. Yeah, good one. So there you are. That's exactly the Gemara we were just looking at today. Beautiful piece of Gemara and a beautiful piece as well. Let me just, there is another piece to go through here. But perhaps we'll leave that for next time. But we were talking here about this betrothal. Remember at the time of the Kiddush Levana, and just symbolizing this connection, the moon close. If I can go to your Haftorah, we've already had this Haftorah last week because we're a week ahead in Sedrus here. If I can ask you, Peter, to bring up the passage which is well known to us, but it's the last words of the Haftorah coming up in Chutz La'aretz. It's from Hosea then. So we can bring Safaria, good old Safaria. Sorry, Malcolm, far away while we're waiting.
Oh, no, I just, in the secret signal, David Melech Chai V'Kayam, the secret signal.
Yes.
I might have missed what you said, but did you mention, I mean, did you draw it from the story of Jonathan and David and Jonathan and the Saul?
No. It could, yeah,
it
here
wasn't.
I'm sorry?
So you didn't connect, it wasn't connected to that at all?
No, it wasn't connected to that. This is a separate piece where announcing the new moon, that was the signal they used, because you're right, I can see where you're coming from. This is a separate piece where they were just saying alive and kicking. In other words, announcing the new moon. The new moon represents this waxing and waning.
Oh yeah, I understand.
As we said before, but it's a good point, a good link. But that's
because it was a secret. It was a secret message, and it's read on Rosh Chodesh, isn't it? Because of the new, isn't it? Isn't that Haftorah? I thought that's the Haftorah. It's
Machar Chodesh, isn't it?
Machar Chodesh, okay.
Yeah, Machar Chodesh.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
No, I see what you mean. No, that was with the bow and arrow. Remember with the bow?
Yes. Yeah.
And that the secret then was it's further away. It's very similar. That's the Machar Chodesh one. You're quite right. This in the Gemara is in a similar way. All it's saying is David Melech Israel Chavakaim, just like the moon is waxing and waning. So it's not just talking about King David and Jonathan, it's talking about going on into the future with future descendants. And we're looking forward to the return of King David and his descendants. Yeah? Are we okay, Peter?
Yeah.
Safaria, let's just
Peter,
take that away.
Thank you.
Stop. Posuk 21 and 22. That's a posuk you'll have at the end of this week's Haftarah. I say in Israel, it was last week's Haftarah. Ve'irasich means betrothal. It's Hashem talking. Remember, we just spoken before about this Nisuin of the moon. And of course, now we just had that. I just had it this week, Rosh Chodesh. The moon is now visible. Well, in some places, I don't know whether it is in London. But I will be betrothed to you forever. I will be betrothed to you. Look at the language here, with righteousness and justice, goodness and mercy. And then the final one, I will, with faithfulness. What is that? I say beautiful psukim, particularly linked to our Gemara, particularly linked now to, we're talking about Kabbalah Satorah coming up with Shavuos, where again, Kabbalah Satorah is often referred to this, remember, meeting, as it were, Klal Yisrael at the time of Matan Torah. It's also considered like this Erusin, betrothal through the Torah, keeping the Torah and studying the Torah. But if I can ask you to press a couple of times on that first one, and we'll get Rush shut here. If you can go up to, just press again on the Era Sichli Le'olam, like a double press on it, on the whole, a double press on the whole area. And you should get up to, or it should give you Meforshim. Is it not doing that? Why is it not doing that? Oh, it's just looking up the word. No, I want to go, just press the whole area. Just not the word, just below on the blue, let's say. Drop down slightly. I don't want a word search. I want, or maybe press resources. What comes up for resources on the right? Oh, commentary is good. I'll take commentary. I'll take Rashi, but can I go for Aleph on the top right-hand corner? Let's go for it in Hebrew first, and then we'll look at the English. Right. We need to go to the look at the top. Rashi. I will be betrothed to you la'olam forever. Hashem saying, and I will be. But tzedek of the mishpat of chesed rachman. Of course, the psukim we say when tying the tefillin around our fingers. What's the second one mean? What does it mean? I will. He says, espouse. I will be betrothed to you with righteousness and justice. Look at this Rashi. The chesed rachman. Sheyovo lechome iti. Al Yedehem, through you, that's the point. If you do tzedek, or you behave in a way of tzedek or mishpat, then I will come back to you. Look at the top Rashi there, but tzedek or mishpat. But tzedek or mishpat, shetisnahagu bohen. If you behave, that's the point. It's wonderful. This is working both ways. There's my commitment and your commitment. Yes, I will be committed to you forever, if what? If you do tzedek or mishpat, I will do chesed of rachamim. Look at this Rashi, please. It's chesed of rachamim, sheyovoy lechome iti al yedeim, through you. With Avram it says, ki yadatev, I know all about Avram, the man asher yitzavi, he will command his family, lasos tzedakah u mishpat, righteousness and judgment. Corresponding to those two, Hashem gives chesed and rachamim. That's the part he's bringing to this marriage. Meis HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and the Apostle says in Dvarim, v'nosan l'chor rachamim, and Hashem will keep es habris v'esa chesed. However, fourth line down, posku minat tzedakah u'mishpat. If, however, you stop from this righteousness and judgment, Kamoshenema, Posuk in Omos, Hahufchim, they're turning away from Mishpat and Stokov. Then he Nichai Afa Kodesh Baruch Hu, Hashem will not be bound by his part of the arrangement with this marriage. Osaf mehem chesed v'rachamim. Ki osafti es shalomi mi'esom. Next line, I'm taking away my peace with the people. And the chesed and rachamim, end of that line, if you go back to performing righteousness and justice, Zion will be renewed, actually be redeemed through judgment and righteousness. HaKadosh Baruch Hu mosif aleim rachamim v'chesed. It gives them a crown. Now go to the last one. If you don't mind, please, Peter, pressing on the posuk and the left. Go to the left. Next one down. Next one down. Press. Oh, there, the Rashi for you. Thank you. What does he mean with faithfulness? with the faithfulness Hashem says that you have, for the trust that you have that ultimately there will come an end to this golus, the exile. All the promises made by the prophets.
We left you in Rashi in Safari.
You left me in the Rashi. Fine. I'm just going to look now. I was just going to look at the English, but I translated it for you. Beautiful psukim. We're talking about this. Yeah, oh, very good. You press the A. Might as well see it in English just to back up. I will betroth you to me with faith for the reward of the faith. While in exile you believed in the promises. In other words, not giving up hope. Go back to the previous passage, please, Peter. And then we can bring up letter A as well.
Sorry, can you repeat, please?
Go to passage 21, please. Oh, there we are. Here it is. Look at the top, with righteousness and justice, which you practice. So you can see the two sides of the marriage contract here, and with loving kindness and with mercy, which will come to you from me because of them, because of the righteousness and justice. Concerning our father Abraham, it's written, for I love him since he commands it, perform righteousness and justice. And we found in Bereshit. Corresponding to them, he bestowed upon his children loving kindness and mercy. Beautiful. When they cease to perform the righteousness and justice, as it says in Amos, they turn this justice into wormwood, and righteousness they leave on the ground. Also, the Holy One message took away from their loving kindness. For I gathered my peace to this people. And when they will return to perform righteousness and justice, obviously the righteousness and justice, we're talking there, being Odom Lamokum, Ben Odom Lachavero, all the mitzvahs, plus, of course, Ben Odom Lachavero, ensuring justice. They shall be redeemed immediately. Zion shall be redeemed through justice. Wow. And her penitent through righteousness. And the Holy One, blessed be He, will add mercy and loving kindness to them, and make a crown of all four of them, and place it on their head. These things are the two sides of the bar of the, as I say, the arrangement. Thank you very much, Peter. Beautiful psukim there, as we're talking about this betrothal, as particularly linking up to Shavuos. Can't be a better way to finish. As we said, the Haftarah that you'll be laning will be well. So meanwhile, I wish you all a very good Yom Tov, a wonderful new renewal. As we've said, just like the Chodesh renewing, similarly our Shavuos renewing, further commitment if we can. Wonderful to see everybody here. And continue. May Chayil El Choyel, everybody should be well. And we're okay for next week. Peter, hopefully. Good. Thank you, one and all. Good to see you. We got some people.